Neither one of us has a particularly interesting story, do we? You couldn't come up with something slightly more imaginative.
Why would I? Isn't the point that we fly under the radar? Just an ordinary husband and wife meeting for a ho-hum marital assignation.
There's nothing ho-hum about us.
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick, Masters of Sex, Season 2, Episode 3, Fight! Robert, Bibbs, Alonso. I was blown away by this episode. I thought it was amazing. I know you were less into it, but...
And I thought the episode was long in the good way. Like, you know, there are episodes that like go fly by and you think that's really good, but there are some episodes that seem to take forever in the best way. And I think, that was this episode.
I think that the new, you know, breed of kind of like the smart cable shows are all going to get to do what I call the we interrupt this program episode, where they basically kind of take all the plot stuff and put it aside a little and just sort of spend a full hour getting to know these characters better and getting them to reveal stuff. You know, there was the Fly episode of Breaking Bad. There was Looking to the Future on Looking, and I think that was what they did on this one, and they did it really well.
I actually don't think they did it really well, was the thing. I kept watching this episode, and all I could see was at the bottom of the screen something that said, "For your consideration." It's the we're gonna break the structure of what we're doing, which can sometimes be very, very effective. You know, even the obvious cliche is the sitcom, people stuck in an elevator talking about their feelings, but yeah, you do get the Fly in Breaking Bad, and that. But what happens is then that reveals something to you. Here, everything I saw in this episode of Masters of Sex gave me a little bit more detail, but what did I learn? I learned that his abusive father was abusive. I learned that the woman who shut herself off from romance had her heart broken once.
Yeah, but about the dad was like, I mean, for a season, we know about the dad only. We only know.
But the revelation wasn't that interesting to me.
Oh, I thought
it was well acted.
It was really interesting, actually.
I think because there's one thing to just be I was abused by my father, but it's another thing to be that I defiantly refuse to bow to him.
But I picked that up though, based on all of the character interactions, the way he was talking about it.
What this motivated him to do what he does. I think.
Yeah, but again, I was picking that up through character. I didn't need all this explanation to get that.
I don't think this is like the Fly. I don't think you compare it to the Fly in Breaking Bad, because that truly was like Breaking Bad was a show that went off in all these crazy story directions and then gave you this. Masters of Sex has always been character driven, always been barely plot driven. So this didn't feel like that much of a leap to have a show contained within one like 11-round fight.
Yes, but first of how long are fights? Because that seemed like it was padded.
That was clearly like they were like stretching things beyond.
Because that fight was over after he had driven across town. Okay,
an 11-round fight would last how long? Like an hour?
Like an hour and a half, tops, something like that. But
and they did a lot in an hour.
They did a lot. They drove across town. They had sex 3 times.
But that was part of like.
And she had a bath between that.
But that's why the episode still had a kind of a almost like a magical quality to it. It didn't really like. I liked actually. I just remember where I was going. This fight can't. This can't be real time wise, and we're slowing things down. So I really think that the episode was about the feeling of things slowing down as much as it was supposed to be realistic about things happening within this fight.
I appreciated getting to see just Bill and Ginny like interact for that much time. I appreciated that. They are great actors. They had some great scene work together. As a one-act play, this was pretty solid. But what struck me is that this episode was like extremely on the nose, more so than usual, about its parallels, about like just keep cutting to the hermaphroditic baby being sacrificed, basically. It was a big deal. Don't get me wrong. It was dramatic, but it struck me as just like they couldn't trust the material to just be good and character driven and everything. I just felt like I was being forced to look at every scene and every line of dialogue and say, brilliant!
But the hermaphroditic baby is like, I mean, the thing that was fascinating about that was like, here are Bill and Virginia talking about things that formed them as children / young adults, and you were giving also the story about how something might be happening at birth that's going to change this person forever.
Which is why I know I was supposed to yell, brilliant, but all I could see was the contrivance.
But see, I liked the payoff of the fact that where Bill spends a whole episode talking about how like I never begged, I never bowed to father, and then he begs that bully to save that baby.
I know, it was so on the nose. That's the thing. They were telegraphing every move in the episode. This series
you could call
is
Death
more...
of the Salesman on the nose for that very reason.
And it's a play, and then I think that works better. Death of a Salesman wasn't like the 13th episode of a series that wasn't structured that way. So every single thing they did, whether or not it's The Fly or whatever episode you want to call it, this is a deviation from the norm of Masters of Sex. So I was my awareness of every deviation was very heightened, and all I saw was, we just want to do this one episode because they think it'll be cool and it'll get everyone's attention and everyone will say it's brilliant for being different.
I grant you that it is structure specific and that we're meant to notice the structure, we're meant to notice the parallelisms of them and the fight and the thing with the baby. But I don't think that makes it not good. I don't think that makes it
terrible. I just was distracted.
No, what it tells me is that you have two actors that you trust so much that you will like give this stuff to them that lesser mortals, lesser actors wouldn't do well.
They were great. They would only play the metaphor, and these guys maintain the characters, maintain the relationship, and worked it into that framework that does allow it to be reflected against these other things.
I loved the subtler stuff in this episode. I don't think this is a terrible episode. I didn't particularly care for it as much as you guys did. The subtler stuff, the constant interplay between reality and this extended role-playing thing, which is an idea they haven't touched on Master Sex at all, and it's a big deal in sex. The constant shift in power dynamics, him attempting to take a place of power in their sexual relationship, become dominant, and her unwillingness to do so. All of that stuff I thought was very, very fascinating. I thought the performances were excellent. I just saw the structure laid bare before me, and I saw good acting piled on top of it.
But nothing felt like out of place, though. I mean, they would have that conversation about role playing.
Is my problem.
And he would have.
But at least it was organic, though.
It was reasonably organic.
Look, any TV show that makes you think about scenes from a marriage, that I give points to.
All right.
So
any TV show that makes me think of really great theater, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I will say this: I wonder if even Bill Masters was on top of things enough in that era to really know how to deal with an intersex baby, because
I agree.
the medical establishment's been really slow.
But
on that
that story. What happened to that kid is, I read this. There's a great book by a guy named John Colapinto called "As Nature Made Him," which I'm sure you heard about.
Right.
And that story was from a baby that in 1965, this baby was born, and in a botched circumcision, this doctor decided, "Why don't you we'll raise him as a girl? You can do this." And this was a guy who had some success convincing parents that nurture was actually greater than nature, like how you raise a child. So that actually was going on, this idea that you could
My friend Catherine wrote a memoir called Sugar and Spice and Puppy Dog Tales about being raised as a boy because she was born with an enlarged clitoris, and they just decided. And then, they did the testosterone treatments when her breasts started coming in adolescence, and just like a whole. And now she lives as a woman, but medical science was not there.
I loved that they addressed that. I do love it, because that's a fascinating and really horrifying aspect of our medical history. And all of that stuff was riveting to me, was terrifying. The way that the dad just completely shut down any possibility of ambiguity. That does not exist. He is a boy or he is a girl. He is a girl.
Acted as this thing that reminds you once again how important what Bill Masters and Virginia Johnson were doing. I mean, it was a great way to keep this storyline just kind of like as an undercurrent of, how important this whole, what the series is about.
No. All of that stuff was aces. I got nothing against that. It was terrifying. It was illuminating. I loved all that stuff.
Tied into the father. And
I got it.
And even just within their own role play, I love the little details, like the fact that he hadn't bothered to assign her a name.
That stuff was really detailed. The role-playing stuff, I thought that was very, very well cultivated. And it
allowed them to be revelatory in a way that those two characters normally wouldn't ever be with each other. They would never allow themselves to put their defenses down. But being in this other place, under these other names, assuming these other identities, sort of was weirdly therapeutic in a way. And you're right, it's the kind of thing that just could be overly symbolic or overly, kind of clever written. But it's the performances that sort of brings it out to an extent.
Which is why it's a before your consideration episode. I don't mean that entirely as a joke. They're amazing in this episode.
I'm sure it will be the episode that they put in, and I wouldn't blame them.
Exactly. No, I'm not even complaining about that. I just, for the characters, yes, makes perfect sense. I get it. As an audience member, the stuff I learned, I didn't really know. I mean, I didn't really need to know. I mean, I guess it didn't hurt. I'm not saying it screwed anything up. I was just like, I got that. I know this. You're taking a lot of time on it. And because of the way that they're portraying it through the role playing, there's only so much consequence that can occur. So it didn't really have the impact I think it clearly wanted to have. I
feel like it's one thing to know, say, that Virginia compartmentalizes love and sex. But I think when you hear the story about the captain and about the house and all that stuff, that deepens the character. That's something that we're going to carry with us for the rest of this show, knowing about her, that is an augmentation of what we already knew about her.
Here's the thing. I was happy with the ambiguity. I didn't need the film to say, no, this is exactly what it is. I was happier not having this wonderfully articulated, wonderfully acted, and yet at the same time, very familiar backstory.
But they've never combined work. They've never combined the work life and the sex life thing as intensely as they did in this episode.
To each other,
been
yes.
leading to an episode like this. I mean, that to me makes it a good episode because it's giving you the thing that you've kind of been wondering about for a season and a half or whatever like that. I mean, this how they compartmentalize work and sex.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that
The
was worth it.
Because clearly she, even though she professes otherwise, is thinking of what they're having as an affair, and he is at least ostensibly, outwardly saying no, if it's strictly work, strictly experimentation, whether or not that's actually what's happening in his own head, in his own heart.
Yeah, and then he gets it there at the end and go like, how are you gonna write this up? I mean, like, because in a way they could write that entire thing they had up.
Yeah,
it wasn't just sex, it was
that.
role play, it was conversation, all the things that the sex they had directly resulted from the way they were talking to each other. I mean, like, it was just...
Definitely I think the integration of the physical sex with the dramatic storyline, whether it's him taking her from behind sort of, abruptly and brusquely, whether it's, her masturbating in front of him to sort of regain her own sense of control. It's kind of like how, like the great musicals, the musical number doesn't just stop the plot dead and do a thing and then go back to it.
Yeah.
It moves the plot forward. It tells you more about the characters. It illuminates what's going on.
And this is a show that...
and in a few movies and in this show, sex can do that as well.
Yeah, and this was a show that in its first few episodes last season, sex really was separate from the drama, and it was jarring because of it. It felt like here's the sex scene now, and and now we're getting to the point now where these things are really like getting
integrated.
I don't think it's fair. Sex wasn't necessarily an integral part of the drama between these two characters. Sex was an integral part of the drama in the ensemble cast throughout. Bill Master's sex with his wife, Jenny having sex with the doctor, Ethan. But now it's between them. So I don't see that necessarily as that big a leap. It's just now that they're in this sexual relationship that is increasingly...
When they had sex last season, it was truly clinical. They didn't really talk about it.
I never thought it was truly clinical for a second.
But now they're talking about the sex they're having.
Well, it was literally clinical.
It was literally,
and
now they're having an affair in a hotel room, and so they have to kind of talk about that. And now we're getting the episode where they kind of are talking about the fact that they're doing this thing. And that's a progression. That's dramatic progression. That's...
All right.
So a lot of thoughts. This is an exciting show, and we have our own points of view. We hope you do too.
Yes.
Catch us next time. Thanks.